My name is Mary, and this is the story of the day I realized I had never truly belonged in my own family. I came to my sister's wedding, Ellie's, with a simple intention: to celebrate, smile for a few photos, and play the role of the kind older sister like I always had. The wedding was held at a lakeside resort in Vermont, known for its flower-filled gardens and lavish banquet halls with soaring glass ceilings. As soon as my car stopped at the main gate, a staff member in a black suit stepped out to open the door. I took a deep breath, smoothed the wine-colored dress, the only one I felt suited the fancy event, and smiled as I walked in. I wasn't trying to draw attention or make the day about me. This was Ellie's day, and I had long accepted that I wasn't the favored child. But what I didn't expect was just how cold they could be. As soon as I stepped into the main hall, a receptionist greeted me with a dazzling smile. "Your name?" "Mary Evans," I said softly. Her smile faltered for a moment. I saw the hesitation on her perfectly made-up face. Her hand flipped through the list a little faster than usual, then stopped. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she looked up. "Ah, here it is. You're placed in the hallway area." I blinked. "Sorry, where?" "Just outside the banquet hall near the coat check area," she said, trying to sound casual. I glanced at the seating chart beside us. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, were seated at the head table. Ellie's close friends and her husband's co-workers all had spots inside, under the sparkling chandeliers. And me? I didn't see my name anywhere. "Maybe there's been a mistake," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. She smiled again, this time more awkwardly. "I'm afraid not. This is the assigned spot." My chest burned. I told myself maybe the hall had run out of space. Maybe it was a last-minute error. But then I saw my mother, standing next to Ellie, adjusting the veil on her wedding dress. They were laughing, clinging to each other as if nothing at all was wrong. I walked over and kept my voice steady. "Mom? Can I talk to you for a second?" My mother, Caroline, didn't even look at me. "Not now, Mary. Can't you see we're busy?" I bit my lip. "Just a minute." She groaned, clearly annoyed, but stepped aside. Ellie remained still, her eyes locked on me with a smile that could hardly be called warm. "I've been seated. In the hallway," I said. My mother shrugged, as if that was hardly worth mentioning. "We had to prioritize close family, you know that." I clenched my fists. "I am close family." She let out a soft, icy laugh. "Oh, don't make a big deal out of this, Mary." Ellie chimed in, eyes glinting with satisfaction. "I'm sure it was just a mix-up. Nobody meant anything by it. Weddings are hectic." Her voice was sugary sweet, but her look was anything but. I turned to my mother again, hoping for even a flicker of hesitation, but she just sighed. "Don't ruin your sister's big day, Mary. You should be grateful you were invited." The word grateful stuck in my throat like a stone. Grateful to be treated like an outsider in my own family? Grateful to be seated next to the coat rack? Before I could respond, my father, Charles, walked up, his voice low, like he just wanted the moment to pass. "It's just a seat, sweetheart. Don't make it a thing." I stood still. The anger was there, simmering, quiet, not explosive, just something deeper, colder. I smiled, an empty one, and turned away without another word. They thought I'd silently take it, like always, but this time, I wouldn't. I walked slowly out of the main hall, my heels clicking lightly against the cold marble floor. The air in the hallway smelled of silk, wedding flowers, and something else. Something out of place, like me. In my hand was the place card with my name. Mary Evans, Table H, Hallway Area. The elegant cursive felt like a slap in the face. I turned the card in my fingers, my palm damp. I had hoped, just this once, that my family would see me as one of them. But clearly, they never had. A soft click came from behind. The door to the hall opened. "Mary," Ellie's voice called, Light, like a greeting, but enough to stop me. I turned. She stood there, arms crossed, her veil fluttering in the cool air, her makeup flawless, her smile anything but kind. "Are you upset?" she asked, with no real concern. "Because of the seating?" I gave a dry laugh. "I'm not upset. I'm disappointed." Ellie tilted her head, her eyes lighting up like she'd just heard something funny. "You're always so sensitive. It's just a seat, Mary. Who even cares?" I bit the inside of my cheek, keeping my voice steady. "You know it's not about the seat. It's about how this family treats me. It's always been that way." She shrugged. "So what? You still showed up, still wore the pretty dress, still hoped for attention." She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only I could hear. "You're desperate for their approval. It's sad." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No, Ellie. What's sad is that you need to tear someone down, just to feel loved." That made her pause for a second, but then, as if it meant nothing, Ellie laughed. "You really know how to kill the mood, like always." Footsteps approached behind her. It was Mom. Caroline, with a tense expression, like she'd been dragged away from the party to handle something trivial. "I heard there's some drama out here," she asked, eyes on Ellie, barely glancing at me. I took a breath, telling myself I deserved an explanation. "Mom, I was seated in the hallway. I'm not some acquaintance or a distant guest. I'm your daughter." She furrowed her brow, then gave a tight smile. "Mary, it's not that I don't value you. It's just, there were limited seats inside. I had to prioritize people who are closer." I stood still. "What did you just say?" "Closer to Ellie," she said quickly. "Aunt Patty, her best friend from college, the people who were there when she was sick. You've always been independent. I never had to worry about you." I let out a laugh, so soft it surprised even me. "You never had to worry about me, and you think that justifies treating me like I don't exist?" Ellie jumped in, her voice syrupy. "Mary, stop it. Mom didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. You should be grateful you were even invited." That line cut deep. I turned to Mom, looking at her like I was seeing her for the first time. "Do you even realize how grateful sounds when you've made me feel like a stranger in my own family?" She said nothing. No touch, no hug, no apology. A deep voice came from my left. "It's just a seat, Mary." It was my father, Gregory. He stood there with a glass in his hand, eyes fixed on the floor. Still the same avoidance, like always. I turned to him, speaking slowly. "I don't need you to defend me, but the least you could do is look me in the eye when you speak." He looked up, confusion flickering briefly before fading. Ellie shrugged, like I was a stubborn child ruining the adults' party. "If you're that unhappy, you can just leave." I looked at the three of them, these people I once called family, and suddenly realized maybe Ellie was right. I tightened my grip on my purse and took a deep breath. Something inside me cracked, not from weakness, but from clarity. If they had decided I didn't belong, then I wouldn't try anymore. And what was about to happen would make sure they never forgot this night. I walked quickly down the thick carpeted hall, my heels swallowed by the plush silence. Behind me, the music in the banquet hall played on cheerfully, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. But it all sounded like it came from another world, a world I was never really invited into. I stopped at a quiet corner, clutching my purse strap like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Ellie's smirk, Mom's dismissive shake of the head, Dad's distant silence. All of it swirled in my mind like a broken melody. And then a memory returned, sharp and clear like it happened yesterday. 3 years ago, I went home for Thanksgiving, the rare occasion when Ellie wasn't around, off traveling with a new boyfriend in Portugal. The house in Albany felt strangely calm. No loud chatter, no trace of Ellie's overpowering perfume lingering in the air. Mom asked me to go to my old room to find some family photos for a memory album. I nodded, a little relieved to do something that felt meaningful, or at least included. My room hadn't changed after all those years. The small bed by the window, the old bookshelf, and the high school photos, mostly of me, alone. I rummaged through the drawer and found the photo box, but then my eyes accidentally landed on the small drawer of my mother's vanity. I didn't know why, but I opened it. Inside lay a light brown leather notebook, resting silently. Every page was filled with my mother's handwriting, crowned, careful letters. I flipped it open, not thinking much, until I read the first lines. The first day Ellie went to kindergarten, she didn't cry. She turned around, waved goodbye to me, and ran into class like a brave little doll. I turned the page. Ellie loves the baked pasta I make on Thursday nights. Ellie used to be scared of thunder, but now she's much braver. Ellie's favorite birthday gift was the little nurse outfit I got her when she turned 8. Page after page, year after year, it was Ellie. Always Ellie. Memories recorded like a private memoir just for her. I began searching, like I was trying to prove to myself that I too had once been remembered. I flipped each page, scanned every line, but there was nothing. Not a sentence, not a line, not even the name, Mary. I clutched the notebook so tightly my knuckles turned white. When Mom walked in, I was still sitting motionless on the floor, the notebook wide open in my hands. "You wrote all of this about Ellie?" I asked, my voice small but cold. She glanced at the notebook and smiled, light as if it meant nothing. "I had to remember everything so Ellie wouldn't feel forgotten. She's sensitive." I bit my lip until it bled. "And what about me?" Mom looked at me, her eyes unwavering. "You've always been independent. You didn't need to be written about to be remembered." I nodded, saying nothing more, but something inside me shattered in that moment. A part of my childhood, a part of my hope, and the part of me that longed for my mother's recognition. That memory came back so vividly in the luxurious hallway of today's wedding. Nothing had changed. I was still Mary, the daughter my mother never thought to include in her memory book, and didn't think needed a decent seat at her sister's wedding. A chill ran down my spine, not from the air conditioning, but from the clarity. I sank onto the bench by the window, right next to the coat rack, exactly where they'd planned for me to be. I looked at the name card in my hand, printed in gold script, then at my own faint reflection in the glass. Behind me, the wedding went on. Glimmering lights, white flowers, Ellie's dazzling smile, and her expensive dress. But I sat here, on the edge of memory, space, and affection. If this was where they thought I belonged, maybe they'd never truly known me at all. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad about that. I just felt like I was finally stepping out of the shadows they'd cast over me for so many years, and I was ready to face all of it. I stayed still on that bench by the glass, my heart tangled between memories and the present. Everything that had just happened, the way Ellie mocked me, how Mom brushed off my feelings like they didn't matter, kept playing over and over in my head like a loop with no end. "Mary," a low male voice startled me. I looked up. Standing in front of me was Ethan Bennett, the groom of the day. He wore a tailored tux, his tie slightly loosened, his dark brown hair tousled as if he'd run his hands through it from stress. In his hand was a champagne flute, untouched. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and nodded slightly. "Ethan." He looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly like he was trying to figure something out. "Seeing you sitting here doesn't feel like you." I let out a soft laugh. "Really? Because your family decided I'm not worthy of a seat in the main hall?" He said nothing. A heavy silence settled between two people who barely knew each other, yet were sharing a strangely intimate moment. "Mary," Ethan finally said, his voice lower, "can I ask you something?" I met his gaze. "Go ahead." He hesitated, his hand tightening slightly around the stem of the glass. "Has Ellie ever said anything about me that seemed off to you?" I tilted my head. "Are you asking if I've heard her badmouth you?" Not just that. He pulled his phone from his inner jacket pocket, looked down at the screen, then shook his head. It's just, lately she's been different, controlling, secretive. There are things she doesn't want me to know, and I'm starting to realize something's not right. I paused. Ellie's harsh words during family gatherings still echoed in my mind, but I had never told anyone, partly because I didn't want to cause trouble, partly because I was so used to being dismissed. But something in Ethan's eyes made it impossible for me to stay silent this time. You might want to brace yourself, I said slowly, because I don't think you really know who Ellie is. He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut in, soft yet strangely powerful. And if you're still unsure, then maybe your mother can help make things clear. We both turned. Celeste Bennett, Ethan's mother, stood at the end of the hallway, holding a phone, her eyes locked on her son. She was the kind of woman who made a room pause when she entered. Not because she was loud, but because her presence demanded attention. Today, she wore an elegant navy gown, her platinum hair in a sleek bun, and her eyes sharp enough to see through anything. She walked closer and handed the phone to Ethan. Look. Ethan took it, his finger swiping across the screen. First, a furrowed brow, then a stunned expression. I saw his hand tremble slightly as he scrolled. I couldn't see the messages, but his expression changed. From confusion to anger, then to something deeper, broken. Ethan's voice cracked. She told her best friend she was training me to be the perfect husband, said I was too predictable, and as long as she stayed sweet in front of you, this house would be hers. Celeste nodded. There are also messages to her stylist. Ellie said that a few months after the wedding, she'd find a way to make you dependent. And then, everything will be mine. That's a direct quote. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale, his shoulders tense, like he was bracing against an invisible weight. I can't believe this, he whispered. Mom, why do you have these messages? Celeste glanced at me, then answered. A friend of mine works at the studio Ellie hired her stylist from. They accidentally sent the backup file to my email when I rescheduled a fitting, and I read it. Ethan sank into a chair, still gripping the phone. The air around us felt frozen. I sat beside him, saying nothing. Part of me hurt for him, but another part knew this was the moment when buried truths finally came to light. Celeste stood there, silent for a few seconds, then said gently, Mary, thank you for not turning away. I gave a small nod. I didn't need thanks, I just wanted the truth not to stay buried. And from here on out, I knew this wedding would no longer go the way they had planned, and Ellie would no longer control everything the way she thought she could. The air in the private conference room on the resort's second floor felt heavy. No one spoke when the door closed behind us. Only the hum of the AC and the faint breeze slipping through a slightly open window. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his eyes blank. Celeste stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder like the only anchor left. I sat slightly to the right, hands in my lap, trying to stay composed even though my heart pounded so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. The door opened again. Ellie walked in with my mother, Caroline. Mom looked confused, but Ellie didn't. She held on to her usual air of confidence, only now there was a flicker of caution in her eyes. And worry. What's going on here? Ellie asked, her voice slightly high-pitched as if she was trying to regain control. Why are you all pulling people out of the wedding? Ethan stood up, and the look in his eyes was no longer shock. It was a cold, clear resolve. He pulled a white envelope from the pocket of his suit jacket and placed it firmly on the table. You know what this is? Ellie stared at the envelope, saying nothing. Petition to annul the marriage, he said, his voice unwavering. And, in case you care, I've already signed it. The room fell silent. My mother gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Ellie stepped back, her lips pressed tightly together. You were joking, right? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Celeste spoke up, her tone sharp as a blade. We read all of your messages, Ellie. Every word you said about Ethan, about me, about this family. There's no denying any of it. I did. Don't. Ethan cut her off, and for the first time, his voice carried both hurt and fury. You called my mother a rich old woman who only knows how to write checks. You told your friend you'd have it all under control 6 months after the wedding. You called me too easy to manipulate. Just pretend to be fragile and you get anything you want. Want me to quote more? Ellie froze. I looked at my mom. She stood still, her face pale as if she was seeing her daughter's true self for the first time. Those were jokes, Ellie said, her voice hoarse. Messages between friends, not serious. Celeste gave a short, bitter laugh. And what about the divorce consultation you filed last month? Was that a joke too? That's when I saw my father, Robert, enter the room, his expression heavy. I didn't know who had called him, but his presence seemed to make the room sink deeper into tense silence. Is this true? He asked, looking straight at Ellie. Ellie didn't respond. Robert turned to my mother. Did you know about this? Mom shook her head weakly. I didn't think Ellie could do something like this. You never think, he said slowly. You've never looked at what's really going on. Then he turned toward me, and for the first time in many years, he didn't avoid my eyes. Mary, he said, I'm sorry. Both Mom and I were stunned. I had never heard him say sorry, especially not to me. I've been silent for too long. Let everything veer off course, he went on. And I know you were right about Ellie. About everything. I didn't know how to react. Part of me had grown so used to being overlooked that this recognition left me breathless. Ellie snapped out of it. You're taking her side? She shouted, voice rising. Your daughter, the one you've always loved, is being turned on by her entire family over a few dumb texts? Ethan gripped the edge of the table. Don't call them dumb texts, Ellie. That's who you really are. You don't understand, Ellie shouted, her voice trembling. I love you. I just didn't want to lose the chance to build a stable life. What's wrong with that? Celeste raised an eyebrow. Is that what love looks like? Planning a divorce before the wedding even starts? She's lying, Ellie spun toward me, her eyes burning. This is all your fault. If you weren't so jealous, if you didn't poison Mom against me, today wouldn't be ruined. I took a deep breath, staying calm. Ellie, you did this to yourself. Don't blame anyone else. You've always been the outsider in this family, Ellie screamed. Always pretending to be the good one, just to make Mom feel guilty. What do you want? To steal everything from me? No, I said, my voice quiet but clear. I just want the truth to be seen. My mother stepped forward then. She looked at Ellie for a long time, confused, hurt, and finally, broken. Ellie, she said softly, I can't defend you anymore. Ellie stood frozen. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no words could fix anything now. She turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her. Not fear of being caught. Fear because she realized no one was standing by her this time. Ellie stood there in the dead quiet room, breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The carefully applied makeup from the morning was now smudged around her eyes. The pristine white wedding gown that had wowed everyone just hours ago now looked tight, burdensome, stripped of the elegance she had imagined for her big day. She whipped her head toward me, her eyes darkening. You always wanted to take me down, Ellie hissed, her voice cracking. You never let me have one peaceful moment, did you? I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. But Ellie didn't need a reply. She charged toward me, eyes blazing, her footsteps echoing against the glossy tile floor. I didn't move. I wasn't afraid. And then, in that exact moment, a steady arm slid between us. It was Celeste. That's enough, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp as steel. Ellie froze, stunned. "Get out of my way!" "You've caused enough chaos," Celeste replied firmly. "If I let you do one more foolish thing, that would be on me." Ellie panted, eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape, or someone still on her side. But no one spoke. No one stepped forward. Ethan leaned against the table, expression unreadable. My father had his head bowed, brow furrowed like he'd just accepted a bitter truth. And my mother, the one who once excused every little mistake Ellie made, stood frozen, clutching her purse strap, eyes rimmed with red. Then, Ellie pushed past Celeste, heels clattering against the floor as she stormed out of the room, her long train sweeping behind her through the hallway. I thought she would vanish behind the door, but no. She shoved open the main doors leading back to the reception hall, where soft music still played, where hundreds of guests were laughing, clinking glasses, and posing for photos against a backdrop of pristine white flowers. And when Ellie appeared, breath ragged, hair disheveled, eyes wild, everything stopped. The music faded. Heads turned. A murmur rose. Curious, stunned, then shocked. Stares. The rest of us from the conference room followed behind her. No one tried to stop her. No one wanted to. Ellie stood at the center of the reception hall. What was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of her life, now becoming the stage for the downfall of a self-crowned queen. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" Ellie screamed, her voice echoing through the rows of banquet tables and shimmering chandeliers. "I gave everything for today. Months of planning, picking out every single detail, and now, over a few messages, a few meaningless words, you're going to destroy me?" No one answered. Ethan stepped forward, his gaze steady and unblinking. "No one destroyed you, Ellie. You did that yourself." She shook her head wildly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You love me, Ethan. I did everything for our future." Celeste stepped forward, slow but deliberate. She faced Ellie, her voice chillingly calm. "I once hoped you'd be part of this family, but you never wanted to be a Bennett. You only wanted what we had." A quiet "oh" rippled through the crowd like a wave. People were beginning to understand. Some guests exchanged glances, a few set their glasses down, their eyes heavy with realization. Ellie glanced around, breath uneven. "She made all of this up," she shouted, pointing directly at me. "Mary's always been jealous of me, always trying to drag me down. She spent her whole life in the background, and now she wants to pull me down with her." I stepped forward, calm and steady, my voice just loud enough to be heard. "I don't need to drag anyone down. The truth carries its own weight." Ellie went silent. The tension was tight as wire. All eyes were on her, even those who had once cheered her on, admired her, now just stood there, in silence. I turned to Ethan, clinging to a final shred of hope. You can't leave me. I'm your wife. We made vows." Ethan pulled the same white envelope from his jacket pocket, the one he'd come prepared with. He held it up in front of Ellie. "This is the annulment contract," he said slowly, his voice calm and cold. And I signed it. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Celeste gently placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "Let's go, Ethan." As they turned and walked away, Ellie stood alone, surrounded by chandeliers and glittering gowns. She had once been the center, the star, built on control and appearances. Now it had all crumbled, right in front of everyone. A week after Ellie's wedding, I woke up in my small Boston apartment. No wedding flowers, no distant violin music, no judgmental looks or whispered side comments. Just me and silence. My phone buzzed gently on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. Mom. The 9th call in 3 days. I didn't answer. I'd heard enough in that conference room, in that reception hall, and throughout a lifetime of quiet endurance. I didn't need a half-hearted apology or a performative hug. I didn't need them to keep acting out a picture-perfect family just to save face. That afternoon, as I was making coffee, a text came through. From Mom. I know you're angry. I can't change the past. But I want to see you. Have dinner with me? Just the two of us? I stared at the message for a long time. The old me, the me from a few years ago, would have said yes immediately. I would have picked out a nice dress, arrived on time, smiled politely, and tried to think of light conversation topics to keep the mood afloat. I would have hoped, however faintly, to hear her say, "I'm proud of you," or simply say my name with genuine warmth. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I put the phone down. No reply. No anger. Just no longer necessary. That evening, I walked along the Charles River, where small lights hung from the railings reflected across the still water. The crisp early autumn air carried the scent of the breeze and soft laughter from passing strangers. I sat on a stone bench and pulled out an old photo from my wallet, a family picture from Christmas when I was 16. Ellie was in the middle, wearing a bright red dress, grinning ear to ear. Mom sat beside her, hand resting proudly on Ellie's shoulder. Me? I stood off to the side, half hidden behind the Christmas tree. I stared at the photo for a long time, then gently folded it and tucked it back into my bag. I no longer needed to force myself into a frame I was never meant to fit in. Another call came through. This time it was my father, Robert. I picked up. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew he wouldn't call unless it mattered. "Mary," he said, his voice rougher and slower than usual. "I'm not good with words, you know that." I didn't answer. I just listened. "But that day, when you spoke, and your mother saw who Ellie really was, I think, for the first time in her life, she understood how alone you've been." A long pause followed. "Whether you forgive us or not, I just want you to know, I was wrong. And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know." I closed my eyes. No tears, no pain, just a quiet sense of peace. "Thank you, Dad," I said softly, "but I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom." That night, I went home, pulled out the family photo album from the shelf. I didn't burn it. I'll tear it up. I just placed it in a box, locked it, and set it on top of the wardrobe. An era had ended, and I didn't need to look back. The next morning, I booked a trip to Maine, a trip I'd always wanted to take but never let myself because of family gatherings or other invisible obligations. This time, I chose me. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their validation. And most importantly, I didn't need their love to feel worthy. Because now, I knew. My worth doesn't come from someone else's gaze. It comes from how I see myself. Family might be where we come from, but it's not always where we belong. Real family is made of those who respect you, listen to you, and don't make you fight just to be seen. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not to run, but to find yourself. Mary's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone born under the same roof will give you the love and respect you deserve. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of the relationships you once thought were unbreakable. Growth doesn't always come from being accepted. It comes the moment you walk away without needing an apology. In real life, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's an act of courage and freedom. What did you think of Mary's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, real-life family stories.